Hello. So today we are at Stansted Airport with the PMDG Boeing 777 in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And the reason we're here is several people have reached out to me on the social networks asking if I might demonstrate using the ILS in the 777 and explain what I'm doing and what the symbology means and how you actually use the ILS in the aircraft. So this is actually going to count just as much for the 777 as it does for the 737 family as well, or any of the big Boeings, because they all work very similarly to each other. And the symbology, to be honest, is the same on all aircraft. So should be a good exercise to do. So we're going to do basically two circuits of Stansted. The first one, we're going to follow a flight plan and follow the flight plan around the airfield. The second one, we're going to use selected heading mode and basically take control of the autopilot and not use the flight plan. Okay, so first things first, how do we get the airplane up and running quickly? We're in the plane cold and dark, which is as I normally have it start. So I'm going to hold the menu button on the FMC, which just pulls up the PMDG setup menu. Then I'm going to go to panel state load and then go next page, and you can load the runway configuration. So that means shortcut it to the point at which the aircraft will be configured for takeoff. So I'm going to press runway and then execute. And if we scroll out with the mouse in a second, it takes a moment to do this. There we go. So you can see the airplane suddenly comes to life, and you can see the engines are spooling up, and the aircraft will start to come alive around us. You can see the various avionics systems are coming online. So it's firing up the APU, it's firing up the engines, it's doing everything at the speed a robot can rather than a human. So we can clear cautions as we go. You can just see the MCP, the master control panel, that's just powered up over there. Okay, so while it's doing that, let's go and program our route, shall we? So looking at the flight management computer, we want to go to the FMC page and go to POS in it. You can see it's already programmed its GPS position, so we can put our reference airport in. Echo Golf Sierra Sierra is the ICAO code for Stansted. Then we can go to route and we can put the code in again, so Echo Golf Sierra Sierra for the origin of our trip. And we're doing something slightly unusual in that we're going to fly a circuit, which you never see in the big jets, but we're going to do it. So I selected origin again, which copies it into the scratch pad and drop it into the destination. Then we can say which runway we are departing from Stansted on, runway 22. And then nothing else here is required, so we can activate that. You can activate just with origin and destination, it's fine. And then we're going to go to the second page of the route page. So rather than program legs in by hand, we're going to program the route in by hand, just to show you that this can be done. So we're going to go to EGSS. So remembering on the route page, you program intersections or waypoints on the right and airways on the left. If you don't program an airway, it will just say direct. So if we just put EGSS in and drop that in on the right, it will say direct automatically. Okay, so we're just going to work our way around these. So ODQ is the next one. ODUKU. Then brain is the next one. BRAIN. There's two of them, it's the first one we want. Then Abbott, ABBOT. And then Upgear, UPGIR. Okay, so we can execute that. If we go and look in the legs page, it's got exactly the same thing. So we could have done it on the legs page, we just chose to do it on the route because I wanted to show you can. So we'll now go and set the departure and the arrival. So we already said we're leaving on runway 22. We're not using a standard instrument departure, so that's enough. Come back, we'll go and set the arrival into Stansted though, and we'll use ILS runway 22. Now we don't have to do this, but we're going to choose to because by choosing ILS 22, it will tune the ILS in for us. So we select ILS 22. We're not going to pick a transition, even though we're flying through Abbott. We're not going to pick it. We're just going to go for the basics here, because we want to kind of, do some of it ourselves at least. So if we go and look in the legs page now, we will have a discontinuity. Because we programmed an approach, it won't figure out how to get from our last waypoint into that approach path. So it's put a discontinuity in place. So we'll go and select the beginning of the rest of the route, and then select the discontinuity, and it will pull everything up. And execute that. So that's our route done. Next thing we need to do is at least put some basics into the performance initialization for the aircraft. We're going to climb out to 5,000 feet today. So 5,000 goes into the cruise altitude. Cost index we'll just plug in as 100. We can preset the zero fuel weight. It auto calculates it in the PMDG aircraft. It's very cool that it does that. It saves a lot of time. Then we can go to thrust limit and takeoff. We can put in 15 degrees of flap for standard takeoff in a 777. And then we can confirm the V speeds. And then we can pre-calculate the centre of gravity as well, which works out the trim for you, basically. And that's pretty much it. We're done. So we'll just leave it on the legs page for the moment. And let's go and have a look around the airplane and see what it configured for us. So the engines are up and running, ready to go. We can go and put the flaps to 15 degrees, ready for takeoff, and they are travelling already. So let's go overhead and have a look and see what they've given us. So window heats are on, the fuel is on, the hydraulics is on, the electrical systems are on, the APU is off because the engine's already running. Seatbelt signs are on, no smoking signs are on. The taxi light is not on yet, but they put strobe on. That's a bit odd. Normally you just have the beacon light on, you wouldn't put strobe on until you're... Although this is runway configuration, remember. But we don't have the landing lights on yet either. Okay. So in terms of MCP setup, we want to go and at least configure the heading to go to the runway direction, which is 222 degrees here at Stansted. Runway 22 is 222 degrees. We're going to go and set our target altitude to 5,000 feet on the MCP or master control panel. There we go, and if you click the middle of it, it selects it. Same with the heading bug. It actually selects it. By doing that though, we've pre-armed the autopilot to go into heading select mode. The flight directors are on, so we can just press LNAV and it will go heading select until it picks up the track, and then it will drop heading select and go to LNAV automatically. So auto throttles are already armed. We can set the 200 knots is fine, so the auto throttle will switch on as soon as we're in the air. Okay, so we're going to push back. So Shift and P will begin the pushback sequence. In normal circumstances, we would have to go and make sure that we're not connected to anything on the ground or have any chocks. So the chocks have already been removed. Ground power has already been removed, or external power. So we don't have to worry about that either. That's because, again, we went for that shortcut route to starting the aeroplane up. So you can see our basic route there on the navigation display. So we'll press B to calibrate the altimeter. I think it pretty much is already though. So last thing... Okay, so yeah, we haven't got the parking brake on, again, because the aircraft was already configured, so we're rolling backwards already, which is good. Let's just have a look and see if TCAS is on already. So it's over here, and it's already on. So we could go and put the range rings on if we press TFC. And where are we in terms of the taxiway? Yeah, it's probably enough pushback, isn't it? So if I press Shift P, just hold the toe brakes for a moment and sit up, and we'll see the truck pull away. Well, hopefully we'll see the truck pull away. Is he down there? There he is. So just wait for him to clear the nose of the aircraft. And we'll ease the throttles forwards and begin turning. Should we put the head tracking on while we're taxiing? It makes taxiing a lot easier, doesn't it? Because you can see where you're going. Okay, so let's just do a bit of a summary while we are taxiing out. So we're going to climb, we want to go to 5,000, don't we, not 2,500. So 5,000 feet, and if we click the middle of this, it will select it. So we've got 5,000 showing us the target for the altitude. So we've got two ways we can climb to 5,000 feet. We could either use flight level change mode, or we could use vertical speed mode. I think just for a bit of a change, we'll go for vertical speed. Vertical speed is more dangerous because it's on you to really to judge all of the other parameters, and the aircraft will stick to trying to do the vertical speed you've set. Whereas flight level change mode, the aircraft will get to the altitude you've selected at the quickest rate it can given the current configuration. So if it can't climb at a given rate because of its airspeed, it won't. You know, it will. It may not even climb at all. So if you haven't got the auto throttles on, for example, it will probably just sit at the altitude it's currently at without beginning any sort of climb. Okay, let's go and turn head tracking off for a moment. Otherwise I'll make everybody feel seasick. So we just straighten up on the runway. And you can see straight away we've got a problem here that, well, it's not really a problem. The checklist incomplete warning has come on. So I'll go and put the parking brake on. I'll just show you how to fix that. So over on the ECAM buttons over here, there's the checklist button, and that pulls up the checklist down here. If we press normal, there are various phases of flight that there are checklists for, and it wants you to have done all the ones as far as the runway. So if we just go through the pre-flight one, the before start checklist, obviously if we'd gone through the full thing with the aeroplane, this would all have been done. Go to before taxi and tick all those off. And then if we go to before takeoff, and that's already ticked, so if we now look up, the warning's gone. Magic. So let's just check this. Doors are on auto, passenger signs are on, auto brake is on RTO, and parking brake is set, so we're ready to go essentially. So again, double check again, we want the lights on, landing lights on, taxi lights can come on, strobes can come on now, we might want to put the logo light on as well. Straighten our view up. Release the parking brake. So if I hold the toe brakes on for a few seconds, the parking brake will release itself, and then release the toe brakes and we're ready to go. So ease the throttles forwards. So then we monitor obviously the runway center line, and we have a look at the indicated airspeed, and we're looking for the VR, or the rotate speed, velocity for rotation. So V1 is at about 157, something like that. VR is about 163 by the look of it. V1. So begin rotation. Gear up. Flaps up a stage. It's remarkable how fast this climbs. Autopilot on. So it's immediately going for 2,000 feet a minute. We're going to put the auto throttle on. So notice it's gone beyond the airspeed we asked for, so it's reset that target airspeed. Yeah, it's done that itself. That's absolutely fine. So we'll now tell it, well, that's fine, you can go up to 250 now. But notice the flaps are still retracting, so as we get faster we can retract them fully. And we're on vertical speed mode to get to 5,000 feet. If we wanted to, we could go flight level change, and the aircraft will do what it can to get there. Okay, so we're climbing at about 2,000 feet a minute, which, you know, it turns out we were at a pretty good rate already. When you get to your target airspeed, any excess thrust left over, depending on how you've configured your climb parameters in the FMC, it will use them in flight level change mode. So you can see we're in flight level change speed mode, and we are in lateral navigation mode, so it's going to follow the flight plan track automatically, and we're looking good. So we can watch this climb out. Well, the green banana on the navigation display represents the estimated point at which we will reach our top of climb in our current rate of progress. So the top of the climb is going to be just as we begin to bank left. So we don't actually need this on anymore, so we can go and turn this off. The reason for keeping this screen blank is the engineering screen down here tends to only show things if there's a problem. So if it's off, you tend to notice it more if there's suddenly something there. Let's have a look from outside. So there's our aeroplane doing its turn. If we look over our shoulder, oh, we're in cloud though. I was going to say we might be able to see Stansted behind us. Oh yeah, I think we will. There it is, look. So we just reached 5,000 feet and we're following our flight plan around the airfield now. So you can see everything's working nicely. So if we zoom out a little bit, you can see the flight plan that we programmed in. So we've got ECVED, Judoku, Brain, up gear, top, what was the end one? Abbott, sorry. Abbott, up gear, and then back into the airfield. Okay, so we've got a few minutes now to fly along, and oh hello, we've got a bit of a controls glitch going on there. Did you see that? The undercarriage switch blipped. Okay, so it's worth having a little talk about ILS and arranging for a successful approach into ILS while we're flying along. So, you will notice here the rendering of the ILS on an airport has got this green triangle on little nav map. It appears as is slightly rendered slightly differently in the likes of Navigraph. So let's just go and open Navigraph for a moment to show you this. I want Navigraph. Let's open it, and we'll go airports. And we'll open Stansted and we'll go to the charts. We'll look at the approach charts for runway 22. And actually we could just open it, couldn't we? There we go. So yeah, we got this chevron shown here, and it shows you here, look, 6.6 miles from the edge of the runway is where that's being rendered from. I think it actually says 7 miles in little nav map, but anyway, I think it's probably the closest point of that triangle. So, the trick of intercepting ILS and coming in on it automatically, which we will do on our second circuit. On the first circuit, we're going to come in manually, so I can show you the symbology changing as I weave around in the aeroplane on purpose. But the trick of picking up an ILS beam is to fly into it from underneath it. So if you imagine this beam starts off at airfield elevation, so that's 300 feet at Stansted, yeah, 300 feet. And it's getting higher and higher above the ground or above the airfield the further away you get. So this is a 3-degree glide slope. So it's a 3-degree slope down to the runway. If you do the maths on that, that works out about 2,500 feet at the beginning of the ILS feathers as marked on most maps. Okay? So 2,500 feet plus the 300 that the airfield's at means 2,800 feet above sea level, which is what we see on our altimeter. So we need to come into here at 2,800 feet to make sure when we get to here, we are not above the glide slope, because the autopilot will not descend automatically in approach mode if it's above the glide slope. You have to be below it, so you can engage approach mode and it will fly level on altitude hold until it hits the glide slope beam, and then it will capture it and start descending all on its own. We'll see ourselves do that on our second approach. For this first one, we're just flying along and we're going to come round, we'll descend after Brain down to 2,800 feet and then come in, and then as we turn it up gear, I'll disable the autopilot and bring it in manually, and then we'll have some fun and games of getting the aeroplane to speed back up and to go back off again. So that will be quite instrumental to show you that, because to come down on the runway smoothly, I'll probably do the first approach without auto throttle or anything, okay? just to make it nice and straightforward. So you can see I'll have full manual control of the aircraft. But for the second landing we do, after the second circuit, we're going to do a much shorter circuit the second time. We'll just use heading mode and, you know, double back on ourselves and come straight back in again. But for the first approach, we'll be fully manual. The second approach, we'll use automatic everything. So automatic throttle, approach mode, flare mode for landing. We'll let the airplane land itself. So it should be fairly interesting. Okay, so looking down here at the navigation display, you can see we're just approaching Brain. So it's worth pointing out then, we talked a little bit about this already. If we select that we want to come down to 3,000 feet, for example, or 2,800 feet in our case, so we can select that as our target altitude, yeah, and it shows you a profile all of a sudden when you press the button in. So this will illustrate when it needs to start descending if you are going to use VNAV, but we're not going to. But it does mean you could follow that by your eye as well if you wanted to, and just chase the marker down. Another thing we could do is either use vertical speed mode to descend, or we could use flight level change to descend. So as with climbing, if we use flight level change with the auto throttle on, the aircraft will descend at the best rate it can given its current configuration. So if you change that configuration, it will either make the descent steeper or more shallow, depending on what you're doing to the aeroplane. If you use vertical speed mode, it will just stick to the descent rate that you've told it to. And then it's up to you to control the other parameters. So you could say vertical speed mode is more dangerous, because you could command something that's not possible, and the plane will just blindly try and do it. I say it will blindly try and do it, it actually won't, because it does have safeguards built in to prevent, you know, certain it won't easily let you get into a kind of a, what do they call it, a dead man's corner or something like that, you know, where you can't get out of it. So modern avionics systems try to stop you doing anything foolish. Okay, so we're just coming past Brain, so let's begin that descent down to 2,800 feet. I'll show you both. So we'll go vertical speed mode, and we'll tell it to come down at 800 feet a minute. And you will see the throttles may move around. Now, we'll go slightly steeper than that. We'll say 1,000 feet a minute. So you can see the green banana has come in. So let's reduce that range. So that's when it thinks we'll get there. But we need to slow down as well. And this is the danger of vertical speed mode. If I go and try and tell the aeroplane to come down to 200 knots, look what's happening to the speed. It can't do it. It's blindly going at 1,000 foot downhill, 1,000 feet a minute. And that means it's never going to slow down unless I throw the spoilers out. Okay? If I went for flight level change mode, it will lift the nose, you can see it gently doing it, and it will favour getting rid of the speed before it descends, so the green bar is shooting out. Yeah, so it's never going to get down in time unless I help it with the spoilers to get to 200 quickly, which I'm about to do, and I'm also going to extend the flaps to 15 degrees. You can see, so the parameters on the indicated airspeed are moving, the window in which we can operate the aeroplane. So because the flaps are coming down, it means our top speed has now been restricted, but our minimum speed will have got less. And the spoilers are interacting with that. If I remove the spoilers, they will improve our slow speed performance because they're not impacting. There you see it's falling away because the spoilers are not impacting the efficiency of the wing. And here comes the green bar, look. Because we're still in flight level change mode, because we're now near our target airspeed, it will actually start descending again. Something else that's worth noting, when you do a turn, you will sink faster in the turn because the airplane's no longer level. It's not as efficient at holding the lift. So as soon as we bank over, we'll lose more height more quickly. But we're pretty on track anyway, look, because it's got to its target airspeed, it's favouring descending a lot more. it's going for 900 feet a minute, look. So without any spoilers, just with the flaps out, it can make that. If I was to extend the flaps any further without having the gear down, I'd probably get a warning. So as soon as we make the next turn at Abbott, I'm going to extend the gear. If you try to extend the flaps to full, certainly you'll get a warning if you don't have the gear down as well. So something else to point out, just while we're doing this final turn, the frequency for the ILS is 110.50. If we look on the nav rad page on the FMC, we don't have to program it in, because we said how we were approaching the airport in the basic flight plan we gave it. It's already pulled that frequency out. There's nothing to stop you rekeying that. So if you had to do a sudden diversion to a different runway, with a, say a parallel runway, an airport that has parallel runways, that has a different frequency, you could just come in here, key it in, and it would be reflected on the displays. So at the moment, you can see these markers. These triangles reflect the GPS track. But you can also see some diamonds have appeared. Those are the glide slope, and so the localizer and the glide slope. So that's the ILS frequency coming into play. They're hollow at the moment. So if we go and switch our screen here to approach mode, because we can look sideways, we can see the same screen over the other side. It's really handy having two independent screens. We can see the navigation display that side, and we can see there's our localizer position, so we're off to the left of the track, which, yes, we are, look, we're to the left of the track, or to the left of the runway center line. Yeah, when this sweeps in, it means we're getting closer and closer to the runway center line. If it goes past us, we're to the right of the center line. And this is our vertical position. So at this distance, we are at the moment below the glide slope. Notice it just went solid there. That means it's within the range of this gauge. So the diamonds here will light up as well. So you can see here comes the CDI, the course deviation indicator. So the airplane will turn left on its own to meet it. So we're going to go for gear down now. Oops, I have to do it on my controller. I keep forgetting that I can't. Sometimes if you do things in the cockpit and not on your controller, it will disregard them afterwards. So we're going to go for more flaps now. As you can see, the runway is directly in front of us. So I'm going to disengage the autopilot and disengage the auto throttles. Okay, it's complaining about it. We can cancel the alarms and cancel the cautions. I'm doing it on purpose, remember, because I want to show you. So I'm going to pull the throttles back to idle. I'm going to configure us for landing. Okay, so watching these meters, this means we are above the glide slope. So if we descend, so I'm just throwing the spoilers out and descending quickly. You can see the diamonds coming up. So when the diamond's in the middle, we're in exactly the right place vertically at this distance. If we continue to descend, we are now too low. Yeah, and if we open the throttles up so we don't stall, and we can climb back out onto that glide slope. If we go to the left of the glide slope, the left of the localizer, you'll see the center line slide to the right, meaning we are to the left of the center line. See it going? It's warning us that we're going too slowly, so I'm going to open the engines up. This is a bit of an air show approach, really, isn't it? So we're way off track at the moment, look. So all we need to do is keep an eye on airspeed and climb back into the right position in the sky and get the airplane going the right way again and chase the marker. But don't keep turning towards it. You put yourself on an intercept course with the track that you visualize, and then you get yourself into what you might call a stable approach. a stabilized approach. Yeah, so getting these airspeed stable in the range you want it, the configuration of the aircraft how you want it. So when you get close enough to the airfield, you will see, in concert with seeing the glide slope here, you can also see the puppy lights, and they should agree with each other. So 2 reds and 2 whites should agree with the diamond being fairly near the middle. Okay, so I'm just slightly too low, look. So you can see I'm drifting low, and that's reflected here and by the pappies. And as I climb back up, they go back to 2 reds and 2 whites. Now we've got 3 whites and 1 red, meaning I'm above it, which corresponds with here.
200.
Okay, so we'll just bring it in nice and smoothly now.
100.
So we'll start to get ground effect
50.
involved in this as well.
30. 20. 10.
Okay, we bounced. Okay, so I'm going to go full throttle and pull the flaps back to takeoff configuration. So we're almost in the air already. Yeah, we are. So gear can come up. We can go and rearm everything, and we can tell it to climb out now. Notice it's not in a hurry to do it. It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's still sorting out the configuration of the aeroplane. So let's go and tell it 2,000 feet a minute. So you just have to be mindful, if you're in a hurry to do lots of things at once, that the aeroplane won't respond very quickly sometimes. So we're going to go and tell the aeroplane to do an about turn. So we want 42 degrees, I believe, which will be the reciprocal of the direction we were going. We'll come out to 5,000 again. Okay, so we've got heading select, we've got vertical speed mode, the auto throttles are on, targeting 200 knots. So let's go and speed that up to 250 knots in the turn. I'm kind of doing this on purpose, because that means when we turn back at the other end, we won't be on the centre line when we come out of the turn, because we've accelerated through this turn. We're not doing a circular turn. Let's raise those flaps now. Well, raise them one stage at a time. We did a tail stroke apparently. That's interesting. I would suspect we didn't, but there we go. So we should stop turning right about now. There we go. So let's have a look at the map and see what we've done. So we did an accelerating turn. Look at that radius getting bigger. So we're now flying downwind at 250 knots. And we'll get out to the end of the feathers, or beyond the end of the feathers, to give ourselves time to turn and configure the ILS again. So we're just going to let the aeroplane cruise down range. Remember, we need to descend back down to 2,800 feet. Hopefully by the time we get to a kind of up gear. So should we do that now, ahead of time? So we'll say, please Mr. Aeroplane, get us to 2,800 feet. So we'll select that and we'll say flight level change. So look, the throttles are coming back. And the descent rate is increasing. So the plane is doing what it can within the parameters of how it's configured at the moment to descend. But it won't do anything quickly. You saw that on the climb out. You need to be careful because the autopilot won't do anything suddenly. It will think about it and take its time. So this time we're going to turn back round, and rather than me flying all over the place on purpose to show you the instruments changing, we'll use approach mode. We'll also, I'm just going to have a look at how this works. So yeah, so you don't have to engage both autopilots on, it's all fully automatic on the 777. On a 737 you get 2 autopilots over on the far right, and you can engage both if you're on engaged on the localizer and the glide slope. Okay, so we're almost out far enough. So let's go and slow ourselves down before we make the turn so we don't end up in a blind panic. So we've targeted 200 knots. You can see the airspeed is bleeding off. If we wanted to expedite that, we just throw the spoilers down and the airspeed will fall off. So you can see that outside. Spoilers are up, causing drag. We also need to extend the flaps, otherwise we'll go too slow. You see we're getting a warning about having the speed brake extended for too long. That's fine. Okay, so we are at 3,500 feet. We'll lose the rest of the height in the turn. So we're going to go and rotate round again to 222 degrees. So it's worth pointing out the autopilot is not going to control the flaps or the spoilers for you, so you can kind of help the autopilot out from time to time by doing that for it. So I'm just removing the speed brake again. I was just using it there to help us get down to 2,800. So we're below the glide slope, that's the important thing. We're just turning back in towards the runway centre line, which is projected here. But we're going to turn a little bit early, which I kind of wanted to happen. We're going to go and say we want approach mode. And we're going to turn that heading bug to be at an angle that intercepts the centre line. Yeah, can you see that over here? Now approach mode is kicked in. This is not us steering or commanding this now. This is approach mode is doing it. So the reason it's doing it is because it's picked up the localizer, yeah, and it's now turning in towards the airfield. It's got it slightly wrong, so it's going to fishtail, which is great to see it doing that. So we're going to slow down and get the flaps ready for the aircraft. If we did an LNAV approach, it would take over speed as well. Let's go for full flaps. Let's go for gear, so we get a warning about configuration. Config gear, I've just put the gear down. That's because I went full flaps before the gear, remember. So we can cancel the warning. So you can see the glide slope is now coming. We're flying along 2,800 feet. Because we're coming in from underneath the glide slope with approach mode on, the aircraft will start descending when we hit it, so watch carefully. The diamond will never get any further than the middle of this gauge.
2,500.
Yeah, so we're just flying along, nice and steady, at 2,800 feet, holding speed. We'll try to get it to go a bit slower now as well. And we're now descending, look, and the glide slope marker is stuck in the middle. In other words, the aeroplane is chasing the glide slope. So we're in approach mode. Doing 150 knots, so let's see if it will let us do it. No, we can't go VNAV this late in the approach. It's fine. So it's up to us to look after speed, basically. So flaps are on 30 degrees, gear is down, landing lights are on, strobes are on. Should we have a look from outside? It's rare that you get a chance to do this. Actually get a chance to watch it on the approach, because we can. take a screenshot. So notice now we have got within range of the airfield. It's realised what we're doing. It's gone to glide slope flare mode and rollout, which means it's going to take over doing everything itself. So let's go and put auto brake on as well.
1,000.
So the aircraft should take over doing a lovely approach and touchdown all on its own. Then all we need to do is hit the reversers and the spoilers. So as soon as we touch the ground, we'll go for spoilers and reversers. Let's get a nice viewing angle. See, look at that, absolutely on the money. It's gone a little bit low, but it may be doing that on purpose, ready to flare for the touchdown point. So we'll wait for it to touch down and then we go, there you go, look, it's flaring and it's nailed it. So spoilers, and there goes the reversers. And it should steer for us. And wheel brakes. Okay, so straighten our view up. And that's just the autopilot coming off. Okay, what's happening there? Config stabilizer, config flaps, okay. It wanted us to lift the flaps up, basically. Okay, logo light can come off. The strobes can come off, now we're off the runway. The landing lights can come off, now we're off the runway. Okay, so we're just going to park up over here on the taxiway out of the way. So I just wanted to show you basically the basics today of operating the autopilot to use the ILS easily. So you saw two demonstrations today. One was flying in manually and the other one was letting it come in on fully automatic. Although it wasn't completely automatic, if we'd had VNAV on, it would have managed its own speed as well throughout the descent and final approach. So I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully you've enjoyed that today, and I'll guess we'll go and put this in the service hangar because we've kind of put it through its paces and really kind of forced the aeroplane to do things it didn't want to do in terms of our demonstrating things. But yeah, if you have any questions, do feel free to leave some comments. Obviously we didn't do everything by the book, so if you did a full flight, did it by the book, like you said, we'd have probably been using VNAV and we'd have used LNAV and the auto throttle would have been following the plan in the flight management computer, but we did it manually today, which allowed you to see setting the speeds, setting the headings, setting the modes for descent. So you get to see a lot more than if we just let the airplane do everything itself. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I'll see you again soon. Take care.